Hey everybody, this video is going to be a little different than normal. As most of you know, I generally don't do too many response videos. I'm not into the snark and the point and the laugh. And I really don't want to challenge the flat earthers because most of their things are opinion on facts. But every once in a while something jumps out that is just so blatantly not just wrong, but intentionally wrong, deceitful, and I would say bordering on lying that I just can't not. Today we're going to talk about a letter that was supposedly sent to Albert Einstein by the University of Bern after he applied to be a professor. This letter's been floating around for several years now on why he was specifically declined his professorship. Well, Anthony Riley recently wanted to comment on this over on Quantum Eraser's channel. Now, before we look at the video, I want to have some specific criteria that we're going to be looking at, and we're going to get this criteria from Anthony Riley. So Anthony, what do you think we should be looking at when evaluating this information?
Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt for the moment. We'll say that he's not being dishonest. But we'll rank up all the points that he makes in this video, and we'll conclude overall, does this guy come across as honest and wrong, or does he come across as dishonest and wrong?
That's some excellent criteria we need to be using to evaluate this video. So as you watch, I want you to remember, is Anthony being honest and wrong, or dishonest and wrong? The conversation starts in another place, and you'll see Anthony in the background fiddling with his screen. Pay attention to what he's doing, and then we'll listen to see what everyone has to say about this letter.
Can make it past the first step, and if they can, where do they fail at the scientific method?
Like I said, none of the first, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All 10 can't make it for one reason or the other. The first 6 can't get past the first step of the scientific method because they can't observe a phenomenon. Everything's in the past with these guys. With astrophysics, astronomy, and cosmology, they're fine with the first step of the scientific method. They just can't formulate a valid hypothesis because they can't manipulate an independent variable.
Can you zoom out a little bit, Anthony? You're presented. A little bit more. Keep going. Further. That'll do. Okay.
All right, so this is University of Bern, dated 1907, June 1907. Dear Mr. Albert Einstein, your application for the doctorate has not been successful at this time, and as such you are not eligible for the position of associate professor. Now this is the most important bit. Whilst you posed an interesting theory in your article published Annalen der Physik, we feel that your conclusion about the nature of light and the fundamental connection between space and time are somewhat radical. Overall, we find your assumption to be more artistic than actual physics. Now, when I first read this back in the day, a couple of years ago, I read it as, oh, we got rejected first time round, and I didn't think any more of it. But the fact that now when I look at this with a bit more down the experience line, I look at it and I think, so they've actually rejected it because it wasn't actual physics. They must be referencing scientific method when they're referencing actual physics, and to reject it on the grounds of artistic, they're actually referencing pseudoscience. So I guess what they're doing here, the way I interpret this, is that they're being polite and professional and saying, you're a pseudoscientist. John, would you agree?
I would agree, and they shouldn't even have to do anything, right? It's either he provides the experiment with his claim or not. See, while you posed, I'm going to read it. While you posed an interesting theory, well, that's not a scientific theory, because to be a scientific theory, it would already had to be validated by experiment and repeated. So this is all nonsense anyway. Who wrote this?
Professor Wilhelm Henrich, PhD, Dean of Sciences in the University of Bern, it says.
You scroll it up a bit just so that's on screen.
Pardon?
Scroll the picture up just so it appears on screen for the audience. They can just... There you go, that's perfect.
I have to hold
it
there.
That's good, that's fine. That's great.
Now firstly, Albert Einstein was declined for his professorship at the University of Bern the first time he applied. However, this is not the letter he received when he got that declination. And I'm going to argue that Anthony knows this, and that Anthony knows this is a fraud. Before we get into that, let's talk about the letter itself. The University of Bern actually addresses this letter on their website, and they have specific reasons why they claim that this is a fraud, and all of these reasons are completely viable. Well, firstly, the University of Bern is in Germany. Albert Einstein speaks German. So why would a German university mail a letter to someone who speaks German, and that letter would be in English? Just let that sit for a minute. It's pretty obvious. This is a fake. Secondly, there has never been a dean, not a lecturer or a student, at the University of Bern by that name. The individual that supposedly wrote this letter was the Dean of Science, but at this time, the departments of Science and Philosophy had not yet been separated, so that position didn't exist. The stamp next to the dean's name, the dean who doesn't exist, that stamp also does not exist, and it appears to be the coat of arms from Hungary. And there is one last thing on this letter that makes it blatantly obvious that it is a forgery. But this is something that you can't see, and I think Anthony knows why.
Where he's being sneaky as sin, right?
One more time, Anthony. Please tell me.
Where he's being sneaky as sin, right?
Yes, Anthony's being sneaky. Now, remember, we're evaluating this letter on is he honest and wrong or dishonest and wrong. So now let's move over to the actual website for the University of Bern. And I want you to pay attention to something very specific. Remember early on, Anthony was doing a very specific job of cropping this image so that only specific parts of it could be seen during the stream? Well, let's look at what the entire letter looks like. Why would a letter written in 1907 have stamps with Albert Einstein's picture on them? This is clearly visible in Anthony's image, but he intentionally cropped it out. He even cropped out some of the lettering on the side just so that the people on the stream couldn't see the stamps of Albert Einstein. Because if you saw that, you would know that this is completely, utterly bogus, that this is fraudulent, and this is not real. But Anthony and Quantum Eraser decided that they would make this as something they could start as a talking point of why Albert Einstein can't be trusted. Because apparently, he's just an artist and not a scientist. I invite you to go to this website because on this website, they talk about the Einstein forgery. And they even show you the true story to include the actual letters written back to Einstein when he applied for his professorship. And the actual reason. And you know what? Less than 2 months later, he was accepted when he met their terms, when he had a proper thesis to explain his suppositions. Anthony, you can say it again.
Let's just give him the benefit of the doubt for the moment. We'll say that he's not being dishonest. But we'll rank up all the points that he makes in this video and we'll conclude overall, does this guy come across as honest and wrong, or does he come across as dishonest and wrong?
And I'm going to say that you're not just being dishonest and wrong, Anthony. You're lying. Blatantly lying to try and make a point about something that you know is fake. What do you say to that, Anthony? There's no defending this position. You're a liar, and you know it.